Hello, duelists. This is Midnight Fox. We're coming to you with this week's Midnight TCG Competitive Edge podcast. This week we have forcibly spoken Jin Zaki.
I won't. I refuse.
We have Keo.
Hey there.
And we have Eddie Phoenix.
Bad cat. Meow, 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 meow.
This week, we're going to talk about deck building, just different aspects of deck building, our ideas on it, some of our favorite staples, how we start with our deck building. Then we'll go into a little bit of the speed of the game and where it's went to, some cards we see as broken speed cards that have really made the game into a race. And that'll be about what we cover. So, starting out deck building, it's a fairly simple concept. A lot of newer players see a lot of great cards. And the newer players want to build 50, 60 card decks. I remember when I first started playing the game way back, my first deck was probably almost 60 cards. Gosh, awful looking, just because all the cards I thought were so awesome, and I wanted them all in there, and I just thought I had the most awesomely built deck until I played in my first tournament and realized there is a wall to hit. And Konami kind of, when they took over, they kind of set some of that stuff out, that it's at least a 40 to 60 card deck, and they set how many cards you could have in the side, how many cards you could have in the extra. So they kind of compressed it down a little. But we still have some newer players who see all the good cards that are available, and you'll see a lot of big decks. So I figured deck building was good to go over this week. And as for me, when it comes to deck building myself, I like to think of off-the-wall ideas, because a lot of the duelists today do a lot of net decking. They go on, they find what decks have been topping, and, well, this is what I'm going to play. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes you run into that player who just threw it together. They have no idea how the cards synergize together, and they lose horribly. But then, of course, you have your pro players who just skip from deck to deck to deck and think, oh, well, this is an amazing deck. I'm going to stick with it for a while. And it kind of kills the originality of the game. So for me, I like to think outside the box. When it comes to deck building, I get an idea in mind. Like when I went with Meta Wings, I wanted to go with a Vayu Turbo deck. And one of my strategies I've had since almost the entire time I've been playing, it's called ambidecking. There's an article on it on the site if you want to take a look at it. And it's basically building two decks into one. So me, the way I start building my deck is I start with my spell and trap lineup, because a lot of what I switch out is my monsters, because I want to go from one deck to another. So pretty much my spell and trap lineup stays the same across the board in almost any deck that I play. Tech Secret against the Fox. Not always, but a lot of the times. It just depends on what I want my deck to do. And then I kind of look at what's going to speed this deck up, what's going to synergize with each other when I'm running this deck. And I've had some fairly decent competitive decks come out of just funky things I've thrown together. I've had some god-awful decks that sucked all the Hades that I just had to delete because they were just that horrible. But like I said, I'm the kind of person that likes to get into a game and you don't just think, oh, well, geez, okay, well, I'm playing 6 Sims. Oh, I'm playing, back in the day, Glad Beasts. I'm playing Black. you don't know what to expect when it comes from the Fox because, yeah, it'll come out starting to look like one deck, but it'll switch up on you and become a completely, totally different deck. As far as the Fox's favorite staples, definitely for me, tour guide, tour bus. I love the synergy these two guys have and being able to recycle the engine and use my pot of avarice to send the buses back and reuse that. And of course, Rescue Rabbit. Thunder Kings are my side deck staple of choice. Definitely your big cards like Blackluster, Soldier Envoy of the beginning, Chaos Sorcerer. But my tech card of choice is Jinzo. Right now, I think he is so overlooked, but in a meta where traps are so heavy, Solemn Warning, Solemn Judgment, Dimensional Prison, Mirror Force, Jinzo is overpowered and overlooked. That's just my thoughts on it. So with that, even though it'll probably be a very short explanation, I'm going to pass it on to Jinzaki. Let's get his thoughts on deck building.
Alright, when you want to make a good deck, this is what you got to do. To be the most original, you got to roll up to your computer, pull up your Googles, decide what deck you want to build. Let's say, I want to build, I want to build wind-ups. Now you're going to Google and you're going to find the wind-up deck that is done the best. You're going to take that, you're going to build it card for card, and then you're going to swap out a few cards. Boom, originality. I win.
All right, we're not talking about net deckers. We're talking about how you start, how you build your decks.
I normally just start with a few key cards and just hit the wiki and start finding things that synergize with it.
So what are some of your favorite staples in decks that you like in every deck?
Mirror Force is the number one. I love Mirror Force. I don't know, big fan of Raikou. I don't really have, outside of Magic and Traps, I don't have a lot of staples that I carry around. And the Magic Trap ones are obvious. It's your Solemn Warnings, your Monster Reborns and stuff.
I bet I know at least one that you really like, since you're a Saber fan. Full Helm Knight.
Yes and no. It really depends on the deck. I've only really used Full Helm in Sabers and to a minor extent in a 6 Samurai build.
So right now, what's your favorite decks?
My favorite decks are those Gaga decks we've been messing around with just because I like the card art on the Gaga cards.
I like the card art, but I also love the level manipulation of Gagagas. That's the one thing that I think is absolutely awesome, and it is the way that they can switch up from being whatever level you need them to be, depending on what Xyz you want to go into. That all you got to say on your deck building section, Jen?
My deck building is very boring.
All right, well, we've got Mr. Kyo up next, and he's Mr. Funky Deck Builder, so let's get your thoughts.
Well, for competitive reason, I usually only stick with 6M. And I gen my deck based on what's currently competitive in the format. Like against Y-Up, I will put in tech card like Debunk and Draft Stun and other stuff. But for more original building deck, I usually look at what do I feel like doing with that deck first. If I just like trolling, I just put in a bunch of fun cards in and then play test it, then add up to see how it's well do. Like with the Madochi, it's not exactly competitive, but it can be, as some of you already know. Yeah.
I hate your Madolchi deck.
I noticed that. Other than that, the the only thing changed from most of my decks are monster and what support in the monster. Apart from that, I still just put in the stable spell and trap like heavy, dark hole, MSD, compulsory background device is still a good tech card that fairly underrated if because it's work against XYZ. They're gonna lose their material. Yeah.
So thus far, we got a lot of everybody starts in that spell and trap zone.
Yeah.
What about favorite staples? Monsters. We know most of
You know, most
Well-
of
the spells and traps. What about monsters?
Monster is mainly depending on the deck of building. But so I don't exactly have a favorite monster that in. Usually it's either Maxi or Vela or Tour Guide because those are fairly consistent depending on what deck you're running. But yeah,
Is that
my
about
monster
all
lineup.
you say on deck building? Come on. What's your favorite engine?
Would be swarming. That's pretty much like someone run a monster XYZ or just swarm the field. That's pretty much my favorite engine. Unless I like trolling. Which mean I will add it would mean I will add in Marshmallow because that's my favorite stalling monster ever. And now Spatial Ranmo is a fairy tech card that can also work in almost every deck because Ranmo is really good when you go up against a big bitter and no way around it. But that's about it for deck building for me.
What about you, Eddie?
For me, when it comes to deck building, I will have to. Sometimes I'll have to sit down and I'll think on combinations of things because, like, I'll take a look at a card like just for an example because I pulled a deck idea from it. Rage from the Deep Sea, which is that new 5-star fish monster that gets 500 attack, 500 defense for each fish, sea serpent, and aqua monster in your graveyard. I get to looking at it and going, what could I do with this? Because there's so many cards that fit in those 3 categories that could be thrown into a deck. And then I just got to start thinking, okay, what different cards could I pull from, this pile or this pile to make this deck work? Of course, I'll always mentally have I would say, staple 6/7 cards that will go in almost every deck. And that's Monster Reborn, Dark Hole, Heavy Storm, Mystical Space Typhoon, Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, and Solemn Warning. Those are your 6/7 cards you're going to see in almost every deck.
Hey, Kia, what's the Fox's favorite spell staple?
Well, depend. Oh, spell stable. Let's see. Pretty sure it's not buried from different dimensions. So probably smashing round or hammer shot, right?
There you go.
Probably not hammer shot.
I was going to say that those were kind of like the next on my list as tech cards that normally get thrown in. Things like Smashing Ground. For me, I love at least 2 tech cards. There being Wabaku and Magic Cylinder.
I know you love Magic Cylinder. You
I
love
love
them
my
so
Magic
much.
And
So that I have to man barrel from behind the door every single time.
Yeah, and then there's cards like even like back before it started really getting played, compulsory evacuation device that I've been playing for a bit. Call the Haunted. Always been a bit fan of that card. If I had to pick another card, I just had it and it just left when it comes to like spells and traps.
What do each of you think is a good overlooked tech card that you use?
Magic Cylinder.
Like I said, mine is Jinzo because I think he's overlooked in our trap heavy meta. So Eddie, you say Magic Cylinder. What about you, Keo?
Spatial Ranmo.
Grandmo is a good choice.
Yep.
What about you, Jen?
Depends on the situation, but I think Morphing Jar anymore.
I like him. I like to toss him into almost every deck. So yeah, just
Yeah,
as I like to empty my hands quickly.
I used to do that too until Dark World coming around again. Yeah, I put him into Psy.
Yeah.
So continue on, Mr. Eddie.
Okay. So that's off with the cards. Okay. When it comes to the actual deck, if there's an engine already built for it, like we'll go with Black Wings, since that's one of the decks that I know the best. If there's cards that automatically go into it, it's just combo. Yeah, that's definitely getting built and looked at first. If I'm looking at Six Sams, those can just build into themselves. If you have to build a custom style deck to where it's not as chainable / combo heavy as, you know, wind-ups, Black Wings, Rabbit, and things like that, you're going to start looking at cards that will definitely pull from maybe one of those engines that could go into the deck. Like how I know you have, Fox have Water Rabbit.
Yep.
I got to thinking about my own style of a quote-unquote water, I wouldn't say Water Rabbit, but it's going to use Rabbit and use like the Aqua and the Fish and things like that to where they can get into the graveyard faster.
I think one of my favorite decks here lately, and I like to think of it as a tech deck, and it's a throwback to the originals, is I'm going to rename it from Anti-Madolchi because I built it because Keo just irritated the crap out of me with Madolchis, to Troll Deck. It's basically 3DD Warriors, 3DD Warrior Ladies, 3DD Assailants, 3DD Crows, 3 Effect Fellers, plus your basic Chaos Engine. Just because we are so dependent in today's meta on the graveyard for almost any deck. You look at Inzectors, you look at Wind-Ups, you look at Black Wings. Other than Gravekeepers, every deck that's very competitive in today's meta is heavily dependent on the graveyard. So if you take that out of there with 12 tech cards that just plain out remove, that's been one of my fun decks to fool around with here lately on Dueling Network. Anything you've been fooling around with, any of you guys, that's troll worthy?
The Crimson Sunbutt.
Entering duels just to yell at people and then leave?
That's the way to do it. Motherfucker, why aren't you playing 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons? No. And then walk away.
I play a deck with 3 Blue Eyes White Dragons. I represent that comment.
I know what I'm just saying, you know, just running in, yelling at people to play that deck and then running away.
That deck's actually a fun deck.
Why aren't you believing in the heart of the cards, man? Heart of the cards.
It
Why
made
don't you play
me
Dark Magician?
look at a deck that one of my worst card of the week picks, and build a deck built around Ally Mine. So yeah, I sometimes think out there. Some of my creations come out like totally amazing, and some just stink. Anything else, Eddie, on deck building?
Apparently not.
Sorry, I had to get my words in there.
Use your words.
Anyway, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the speed of the game. And really, I want to say that when Konami took over, Upper Deck was already moving towards a quicker game, but Konami kind of busted it into overdrive with the ease of summoning with synchros and now Xyz. I mean, when they were first released, we had like the engines like Perfect Circle at first, and then we ran into Teledad, and now we look at the Rabbit decks, the wind-ups. Just, I think the speed of the game is getting a little bit out of control in Konami. In my opinion, they really need to look at it before they kill the game, because like the newer players do get tired of going into a duel and in one turn a person pulls into an OTK. And
It's not just the newer players, it's the older players who are getting sick and tired of that shit too.
and if it's one person, that's one thing. But when you see everyone playing the same deck, card for card,
Over and over and over and over and over and over again.
it's just like, yeah, why am I playing this duel? What are your thoughts, guys, on the speed of the game?
We want to go
Well,
to Jin first, or Coyote?
yeah.
Start with Jin.
Jin can go first.
Well, with Gaga getting their own draw card, I think it kind of proved that Konami's for giving everything possible a draw engine, and that's the thing. They want to make the game faster, I believe. We've got a lot of good cards to make it happen, and it's just going to keep snowballing because it's power creep out of control, I guess.
I think that was, the pure enjoyment, even though it was annoying, was back in the Soul Control days. Even though you would run into annoying decks, it was still slow enough that you had a chance to counter. But today, if your opponent draws the right 6 cards to start their hand with, it's game over.
Depend what deck, but usually it's just 2 cards for Y up. You just need Magician and Shark, done. And for Insecta, you also need 2 cards, Dragonfly and On It, done. For Dino
And
Rabbit, 1 card, Rabbit, done.
Tour Guide, Tour Bus Engine,
Yeah.
Recycle, Abuse. That's my favorite engine, the Tour Guide, Tour Bus. And yes, I fall into that bad mold there when it comes to that, and maybe Rabbit, because I do like them, but yeah, just the speed of the game, I think, is really what's driving away the newer players, and as Eddie said, even the older players. Those of
Yeah,
us.
also to counter that, I believe Konami, that's the reason why Konami put Toronto Tribute and Mirror Force back at 2. To counter the speed of it, like, to counter the how you can swarm really fast.
But see,
Uh,
I think the problem they did with that is they give us cards like Zen Mains, negate, Stardust Dragon, negate, Starlight Road, negate. They give us so many negations to that. At least with Solemn Judgment, you had to pay a steep price. Whereas Zen Mains is basically almost always a plus. Stardust Dragon is almost always a plus. There's a little bit of balance there, but it's getting things set up correctly, which I think is one of the reasons that cards like Compulsory and Dimensional Prison have become staples in almost any deck. Because Mirror Force and Torrential aren't as effective as they once were. Because you have all the negators. Dark Hole is not as effective as it once was. That's probably why we haven't lost Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning. Because really, removal and bouncing is the only thing that's effective right now in the meta. And then again, you run into decks like Madolchi's that bouncing really does you no good either. Because if they got out Chateau and Ticket, you're just plussing their hand anyways.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's why you're going back to removing.
Which is what I did. My anti-Madolchi deck. Trollolololo.
See, that's one of the big things when it comes to the metagame today, is that if you can run a proper and well played macro deck, you can shut down at least 90% of the meta in today's game right now. So
So, with speed of the game, takes us into our next one. Our thoughts on broken speed cards. So, let's start with one of the most obvious, Rescue Rabbit. I really wanted to go into this in this podcast just because it finally gave us a throwback to normal monsters. For the longest time, normal monsters have been dead because everybody wanted the effects of running effect monsters. So everybody's just like, no, yeah, we got great beat sticks, but what's it going to do but go out there and beat someone down? And then we got Rabbit. And this card there's big beaters for almost every archetype within the game. So, I mean, you could build almost any variant of Rabbit, and you're going to have a plethora of normal monsters to pull from. But that's the one thing I do like about Rabbit, is it also makes you look at some unthought of cards. For me, what I've started teching into Rabbit builds is Birthright. We've got Call at 3, so I've got extra Call of the Hornets by playing Birthright. At first, I thought Juicy Break, but then when I really looked at the card, you destroy your side of the field if you have Xyz and Synchro monsters too, and fusions, because it destroys everything that's not a normal. So for me, looking at Rabbit, it made me look back at Birthright, just for the ability to have extra summons. And if you line up a field, you can go into an easy Shockmaster. Summon 3 cards in one turn. I mean, Rabbit is really that broken. What are your guys' thoughts on Rabbit?
It's one of the best cards to get not only thin out your deck, it's also provide you enough material for any type of YZ from 1 to 4. Yeah.
And I mean, even now, with like we got Slacker Magician, which is a 2100 defense monster. So yeah, you could even go into level 1 vanillas and still have a good defensive wall to put up that you can negate its destruction. And then you pop out a couple level 2s and you got a Gotchi out who's going to boost that defensive wall even more, and he's something that can't be destroyed. Basically, you're looking at removal to get rid of these cards. About you, Eddie. What do you think of Rabbit?
it's annoying when you're playing against it in, like, Dino Rabbits. Those things are annoying as all hell.
Logia and Doka.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people have kept their focus, just because that was the showcase when Xyz monsters, other than, of course, Utopia and Gotchi, a lot of the focus when Rabbit was released was on those two cards. but there are so many things you can go into now. Black Ship, Leviair, wind up Zen mains, if you build the deck right. What about you, Jen? What do you think about Rescue Rabbit?
It's a card. I don't know. I play against it. I don't really think about it because it's not a card I'm looking forward to using.
Why don't you look forward to using it? There's so many abuses.
Because
for
everyone else uses it. I'd rather do something different.
By the way, yes, Jen, I do want those. Those look great.
To explain that, I linked in the chat box a picture of Orica cards of the it's like fake cards that look like the ones from the anime. So you've got the picture blown up nicely, you've got the stars, the attribute, and the attack and defense without anything else. They look really nice.
For me, going into the next one, and we'll kind of all give our thoughts on these. Another speed card that Tour Guide. I mean, you've got Night Assailant, you've got Torbus, you've got Sangan, you've got a lot of level 3 Fiend monsters. And I will say that Night Assailant is one of the newer ones I've seen tossed into decks, but that's another one of the power creep. And it's a quick Zen mains. If you've already used Rabbit and you're running them both in the same deck, it's an easy Leviair into Rabbit, bring out 2 level 4s or 2 more level 3s, and just line up your field so easily. I've even seen, going back to Rabbit, splashed into Glad Beast that actually topped in Florida. Florida is where Glad Beast topped at.
Oh, really nice.
Yeah. So, and I mean, with them having Andal 1900 beater, and you can use that to go into Esadari, return them, and be able to abuse Rabbit again. So, but Tour Guide, yeah. And for me, the engine of Tour Guide into Tour Bus, drop the Tour Guide, drop the Tour Bus, then put the Tour Guide back on top, rinse, reuse. That, for me, that's another speed card that usually if you pull into it first turn, it's just boom. It's an easy setup for stalling out or defeating your opponent very quickly. What do you guys think as far as Tour Guide and its effect on the speed of the game?
I've been using it and I like it. Only problem I find with it is a lot of times I'll draw Tour Bus on the first turn and nothing else. It's like,
I hate that.
Hello there. What am I going to do with you? Oh, I'm going to lose. Got it.
Oh, you're the right tour. It's like, well, you're a tour, but not the tour that I'm looking for. Damn it!
Well, it's 2 on the underwater after all.
It's like, this is not the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for the other one.
Now the only thing
Look
I
at the cards. You have failed me.
The only thing I do like about Tour Bus, even if you do get stuck with that, is a lot of people are running 6M, rabbits, wind-ups, things that depend on the grave. So for me, Tour Bus is not only a tech card for my deck to send things back, but my opponent can easily set up an engine with, say, wind-ups to put a rabbit or something into the graveyard and get a wind-up rat just to keep boom, 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 booming out to the field. So being able to tech just because whenever it's sent to the graveyard, you get its effect. I do like Tour Bus, but yeah, usually if you draw it early game, it's a pretty dead draw, especially on your opening hand. What about you, Keo? What are your thoughts on Tour Guide and its effect on the speed of the game?
Well, it's very fast, and not only is thin out your deck, you can literally go into almost every rank tree, and if your opponent drop Maxi, you stop at summoning Sengen and wait or attack. It's guarantee you 2 monster, if nothing else.
Eddie?
Tour guide, drop, pull a level 3 fiend, overlay, and then go. I've seen a lot more level 3 fiends being played because of him, so, or her, whatever.
And I guess for me, as far as power creep, for a third one, I'm really gonna have to go with something I've been seeing played a lot more here lately, and I don't know if you guys have a whole lot of thought of this, but just for Thunder decks, Thunder Seahorse is another one that goes into the Hunter decks.
Yep. And usually I saw it in the Watt deck more often than the Hunter deck. And so everything's fine.
It's also good. I mean, it could be tossed into Battery Men, which that's not always 100% guarantee, but we do know that Battery Man OTK does exist if you can draw into it.
Yep.
But I think just if I was to name off 3 speed cards that really have an impact, as far as monsters, I would have to look at those 3. Jen, you got any annoying speed cards?
I can think of 2, one of which being one of the oldest cards in the game, and that is, it's the card that they have given us for a while now, and I'm surprised it's not banned again. Monster Reborn. You top deck that, you take something from the graveyard, and you go. It can be any of the cards previously mentioned monster-wise, and you can take it from your opponent.
Yeah.
One of the most broken cards we have access to. And the other one, given our prevalence of cards with 1500 or less attack, is Inferno Reckless Summon.
Makes
Get-
sense.
And I'm
3
amazed
cards
to not
out,
see that
boom.
played more.
Yeah, especially because there's a lot of cards out that are limited. So let's say your opponent's sitting on BLS, you can Inferno Reckless Summon to something nice, and they can't summon anything.
Tour Guide, Tour Bus, Sangan. Well, it's not going to do a whole lot of good with Sangan, but it's an easy way to go into 2 Tour Guides, 2 Tour Buses, some of the Hunters. Yeah, there's a lot of lower attack monsters. And other than Rabbit decks, a lot of decks have switched to running lower monsters just for the ease of Xyz summoning, because it's just that easy.
And
Mhm.
most of the swarming that you see in the game is in the level 3 monsters.
Yeah. You'll get a few level 4s because of Rabbit, mainly for, like, Logia or the Thunder. Oh, what one is it? It's number... Shockmaster. Shockmaster. So, yeah.
Oh yeah, Inferno Reckless Summon gives you an instant Shockmaster if you choose a level 4 monster.
Oh, yeah.
What about you, Keo? What do you think? A few broken speed cards. Doesn't have to be monsters.
There's a lot of them, and I would have to agree with Zin on this. It's a Monster Reborn, because that thing you just need to top like that, as Jin said, and you literally can get anything out from the graveyard. Yeah. Other than that,
Eddie,
Huh?
you got any others, Keo?
Nope, not really.
What about you, Eddie?
Most of the speed cards are already have been taken, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot that I'm missing right now because I'm not thinking about them. So I'm spent.
Well, so I think we covered everything we wanted to go over to. I'm sure we'll have a few listeners who have a few more ideas. Feel free to pop them in. I think next week, hopefully, we get our listeners listening. Might leave this up to viewers' choice. What do you got? What do you want us to talk about this week? Kind of wanted to look at the power creep of the game, how fast it's gotten, and how it's affected the game. Um, Fun wise, player wise, just overall. I mean, reprints might be a good one we go over, but
Yes, reprints.
I'm gonna leave it up to our members, and if we don't get a whole lot of responses, maybe we'll go over reprints. But just some closing thoughts. We are in need of a very strong Magic moderator. So if you know the game of Magic very well, you're competitive, you'd be able to do tournament reports, and you'd be willing to do card reviews and stuff. Send in an application for that. Keep bringing your friends. The race to 8,000 still going on. Right now we are at 7,447 members. It's for an Exodia mat. Kyoyu, he just won our Flash Tournament 3, which was for the Inzektor Ladybug mat. Right now, we've got our next Flash Tournament. It's going to be for a number 50 Black Ship of Corn. And after that, we're going to be doing one for an Inzektor Dragonfly mat. We want to thank eRoll J for giving us those mats to give away. They're our partners on the site, so I want to make sure I give them a mention. And as far as your hint, my wife thought of an idea, so I'm possibly thinking some people might be playing some of my decks. But that's about all I'm going to say about that. And just in closing, watch out in February. We're going to be holding the Tri-Site tournament. It's between Yu-Gi-Oh! Forums, Midnight TCG, and Yu-Gi-Oh! ETC Forums. Top prizes are going to be the top 2 duelists between the 3 sites are going, each of them is going to get a Prophecy Destroyer 10. That is courtesy of the Fox. And for everyone who goes to every site and registers on every site, if you're a member on all 3 sites, you're going to be entered into a raffle. One of the prizes is going to be a Calcujotter, and the other one is going to be an Inzektor Gigamanus mat. So, just for signing up on all 3 sites, you're going to have a chance to win an Inzektor Gigamanus mat. So, a free play mat. And as long as you stay in, and if you make it to the top, you got the chance to win a Prophecy Destroyer 10. So, I mean, we're all about doing free stuff. Keep telling your friends, keep bringing them, keep listening. And I'm going to let Eddie take us out this week.
How am I going to be taking us out?